Oh hey, you chose to stick around for the reader's afterword. In that case, wash your hands and put on these sterile gloves, because we're about to do some dissecting of stuff. So, Stephen Stone became champion. This is a feel-good kind of story, in that we all read it, knowing what the ending would be from the start. We weren't in it for that. The thrill was in the journey, experiencing how his ultimate triumph played out. I suppose, therefore, that even if he hadn't beaten the League, the glory of the journey would remain intact. It certainly did for Ash in the anime series. Good thing he has infinite money to continue funding his perpetual travels. Okay, so you probably didn't come here for an economics lecture, but let's face it, travel is expensive. Every Pokemon trainer's story of League conquest necessitates it, with absolutely no guarantee that their work will pay off. So, either Pokemon training is a luxury afforded only to rich hobbyists like Steven, or the League has some sort of quiet sponsorship program in which they cover participants' Pokecenter bills, meals, and housing. If it's neither of those, all that's really left is one hell of a motivation to be a Pokemon trainer. That's what I'm really getting at. Understanding motives. They drive every thought and action that defines a good character. As I begin my review of The Long Road, which I'll be doing in chronological order of events, I'll start with the cornerstone question. What motivated Steven to take on the League Challenge? Wolfland set Steven up as a quiet child in his first grade year, an introvert with a knack for learning quickly, but an inability for proper social interaction. The whole reason he'd received a Pokemon in the first place wasn't due to his father's wishes for him to be Hoenn's next champion. Beldum was simply a therapy dog. I kinda wondered why Joseph Stone proceeded to enroll his son in trainer school if he meant for Steven to succeed him with a family company someday. At the story's end, it's explained that Mama Stone always had an adventurous streak, and Steven inherited it from her. If I were a dad with an only son, expecting to pass down the business to him, why would I actively nurture that drive? I don't think it's the kind of thing you can just get out of your system by indulging it, since the Pokemon stay with you post-adventure. So why give such a gift? I mean, obviously Joseph loved Steven, and knew it would mean a lot to him if he could train his therapy dog. But he must have realized what it would come to down the road. Was he hoping Steven would do well, lose to the League, but be satisfied with a collection of badges? I couldn't say without my own headcanon. If Pokemon were real, and I had a son who wanted to go around fighting gyms and getting badges, I'd only let him under certain conditions. First, he'd need to earn a grant from the League so that we wouldn't get thousands of dollars into debt paying for animal healthcare. Second, I'd need assurance that Pokemon training looks good on a resume or a job application. Third, the kid would need to finish middle school with a 3.5 minimum GPA first, and all training would be limited to summers before school resumed in the fall. Fourth and finally, I'd want to chaperone Pokemon with him at all times, in case the rest of his team got incapacitated in the middle of a grassland filled with jackals. Okay, so I went off on a tangent there, but I hope it highlights the difference between having a therapy animal and training a pack of attack dogs. It's a lot of time, risk, and hard work for an experience that would likely leave most people disappointed and broke. That's what happens when it's everyone's job to hurt your Pokemans. There needs to be more incentive than just a romanticized vision of getting to travel with pocket pets. So, what drove Steven to enter that rodeo? A need for independence? To feel strong? Adventure without the safeguards? At times, these things are touched upon or hinted at, but I don't think they were satisfactorily established. I don't really fault Wolfland here, because the games didn't do a good job of it either. In Gen 1, the original task was just to fill a Pokédex. In Gen 2, it was to retrieve an egg at some guy's house. In Gen 3, it was to save a professor during his field study, and on it went. The gym challenge just happened to be a whimsical idea in the spur of the moment, which erupted into full-blown obsession to see how deep the rabbit hole went. So it was with Steven. What started with an animal he could show off his rock collection to turned into a fascination with how much stronger he could make said animal. Why'd he want it? I don't know. He just kinda wanted it. Since this is the story of a champion-class trainer, Wolfland portrays Steven as a bright child with a thirst for knowledge. Realistically, desire for greatness isn't enough. One must start out with good genetics and upbringing if they are to win out against other people of equally strong motivation. That said, Wolfland humanizes Steven by showing his insecurity when it comes to large-scale Pokemon matches with audiences. He loses to Roxanne after being blindsided by her Geodude's access to ground-type attacks. Then, when he laments over Beldum's inability to learn anything other than Takedown, his Pokemon runs away and is nearly taken by poachers. He manages to take Beldum back and reconcile with it in the end, but it's the first rough patch on the long road. I thought it was kinda neat how Wolfland took creative liberties to allow Beldum early access to psychic powers. It's not canonical, but it's within the realm of believability, and I didn't see it coming. More importantly, it knocked out the poachers, who likely had Pokemon of their own that they didn't get the chance to use. I guess we'll never know, but had they persisted, it's not like Steven had a fallback for rescue. In retrospect, it would have been smarter of him to simply sneak up, use his Pokeball's Recall Beam to retrieve Beldum, and then run like hell. Less interesting for a scene, but smarter. In order of events, the next thing we learn about Steven is his easy first victory in a gym. Given that it's Petalburg City, Wolfland appropriately makes it a grass-type gym before Norman moved to Hoenn. This is some time after Pokemon School, and given that Steven gets his last badge by the time Roxanne gets her teaching license, it's anyone's guess how old he is. Was he in his early 20s when he began to collect badges, or his mid-teens and it just took him a while? I'm tempted to say it's the former, because the time it took him to go from Petalburg to Dewford, to Slateport, to Mauville was less than 3 weeks, and most of that time was dragged out because he was waiting to heal. If we go by that rate, he'd be done in a season. Also, since the show's so vague, people on the internet have taken to speculating and come up with about 3 to 6 months for a standard journey. That said, Wolfland hints that it actually took a lot longer in Steven's case. He sails to Dewford Island to acquire his second badge, where he's shocked to discover that the former Poison-type gym is now Fighting-type. Brawly isn't yet the head of the gym, it's his dad, Jude, but Brawly's just a boy at this point in time. Canonically, he and Steven are supposed to be roughly the same age, so seems it really does take Steven longer after his first 2 or 3 badges. In Chapter 14, Wolfland affirms that it's indeed multiple years of time that Steven spent traveling with his Pokemon family, so it seems a lot went on in the background between chapters. That's something I'm still waiting for in a Pokemon fanfic, by the way, an in-depth experience of all the work that goes into actually training a Pokemon. I'd like to read a story where a greenhorn trainer sends a newly caught Pokemon into battle against another, and goes on to start shouting commands, only for the new Pokemon to look super perplexed at this weird human screaming things in his bizarre human language. We consider them too stupid to function in battle without verbal commands, yet smart enough to instantly pick up on our linguistic terminology. That's a novel idea. Just once, I'd like to see trainer and Pokemon bond over nouns and verbs. That's great, Charmander! That thing you just learned to do is called smokescreen, okay? From now on, when I say smokescreen, you do that thing you just did.